The waiter looked at Daniel Carter's worn jacket, then at the little girl beside him, and quietly moved the menus out of their reach. Daniel had saved for nearly 3 months to bring his 8-year-old daughter, Emily, to this luxury restaurant for her birthday. She had spent weeks talking about the chandeliers she had seen through the windows whenever their bus passed downtown, and Daniel had promised her that one day they would sit beneath them. Now, surrounded by polished marble, crystal glasses, and people dressed in expensive suits, Daniel realized the waiter had already decided they did not belong there. What neither of them knew was that a woman sitting only a few tables away had heard every word, and she happened to be the CEO who owned the entire restaurant group. If you believe kindness still matters and that people deserve second chances when life has been hard on them, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Dad's Hope. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may need a reminder that dignity should never depend on money, clothing, or status. Daniel had been raising Emily alone since his wife died 4 years earlier. Before that, their life had never been wealthy, but it had been steady. Daniel worked as an electrician for a small contracting company, his wife taught preschool, and together they managed to build a simple home filled with laughter, weekend pancakes, and plans for the future. After her death, everything changed. Daniel reduced his hours for nearly a year because Emily struggled with grief and could not sleep unless he stayed beside her. The savings disappeared quickly. Medical bills from his wife's final months remained. By the time Daniel returned to full-time work, he was living paycheck to paycheck and measuring every purchase against rent, groceries, and school expenses. Emily rarely asked for much. She knew more about money than Daniel wished an 8-year-old should know. If she wanted a toy, she checked the price first. If Daniel offered dessert at a diner, she often said she was full because she knew he would eat less to pay for it. That was why her birthday request mattered so much to him. She did not ask for a new tablet or an expensive party. She wanted to eat at Belmont, a restaurant she had seen through the bus window since she was small. Daniel searched the menu online and nearly changed his mind when he saw the prices. Still, he began putting aside a few dollars each week. He skipped coffee on workdays, took 2 extra weekend jobs, and delayed replacing his worn work boots. By Emily's birthday, he had enough for dinner, dessert, and a tip. He even bought a second-hand blazer from a thrift store. Emily wore the blue dress her aunt had given her the previous Christmas. When they entered Belmont that evening, she looked at everything with wonder. The gold lights reflected across polished glass. Soft piano music filled the room. Servers moved between tables carrying plates that looked like works of art. Emily whispered that it was even prettier inside than she had imagined. Daniel smiled. For those first few seconds, the sacrifice felt worth it. Then the waiter approached. His name was Vincent, and his expression changed when he looked at them. Daniel explained that he had made a reservation under Carter. Vincent checked the tablet and found it, but instead of leading them toward the main dining room, he glanced toward a small table near the service entrance. Daniel noticed. He politely mentioned that the reservation included a birthday request and that he had been told they would be seated near the windows if possible. Vincent looked at Daniel's blazer, then at his shoes. He said the window tables were usually reserved for guests ordering from the premium tasting menu. Daniel said they had already chosen what they planned to order and simply wanted the table listed on the reservation. Vincent sighed. Then, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, he asked whether Daniel had reviewed the menu prices carefully before arriving. Emily looked up at her father. Daniel felt his face burn. He said yes. Vincent continued. He explained that Belmont was an upscale restaurant and that some guests occasionally arrived without realizing the expected spending level. He suggested there were several family restaurants nearby that might be more comfortable. A couple at the next table turned their heads. Emily lowered her eyes. Daniel wanted to leave. Every instinct told him to take Emily somewhere else, buy her a burger and cake, and pretend none of it mattered. Then he saw her looking toward the chandelier. She had waited months for this night. Daniel swallowed his pride. He told Vincent they would stay. Vincent led them to the table near the service door. Daniel sat across from Emily and tried to smile. She asked whether she had done something wrong. That question hurt more than anything the waiter had said. Daniel told her no. He reminded her that she looked beautiful, that it was her birthday, and that tonight belonged to her. A few tables away, Caroline Mercer had heard almost everything. Caroline was the CEO and majority owner of Mercer Hospitality Group, the company that had acquired Belmont 2 years earlier. She was dining privately with the restaurant's regional director to evaluate service quality before renewing the general manager's contract. None of the floor staff knew she would be there that evening except the manager. Caroline had spent years building a reputation around what she called quiet excellence. She believed luxury was not about making wealthy people feel important. It was about making every guest feel cared for. What she had just witnessed was the opposite. She said nothing at first. She watched. Vincent returned to Daniel's table and placed menus in front of them. Daniel ordered one of the least expensive main dishes for himself and let Emily choose the meal she wanted. She selected pasta and asked whether they could still have the chocolate birthday cake she had seen online. Daniel checked the price. Then he smiled and said yes. Caroline noticed that too. She saw Daniel quietly remove the appetizer he had considered ordering. She saw him calculate the total on his phone beneath the table. She saw Emily offer to skip dessert. She saw Daniel refuse. He would rather go without than let his daughter feel the cost of her own birthday. When Vincent returned, Emily accidentally knocked her water glass with her elbow. Only a small amount spilled onto the tablecloth. She immediately apologized. Vincent's reaction was sharp. He muttered that this was exactly why certain tables were unsuitable for children. Daniel stood. Not aggressively. Just enough to put himself between the waiter's embarrassment and his daughter. He said Emily had apologized and that there was no reason to speak to her that way. Vincent responded that Daniel should understand the standards of the establishment. That was when Caroline stood. The regional director went pale. Caroline walked toward the table. Vincent immediately changed his posture when he recognized her. She did not raise her voice. She asked him to repeat what he had just said. Vincent hesitated. Caroline asked why Daniel and Emily had been seated near the service entrance when their reservation showed a window table request approved that afternoon. Vincent tried to explain that he had made a judgment based on availability. Caroline looked around. 2 window tables were empty. She asked why Daniel had been questioned about whether he could afford dinner. Vincent had no answer. By now, the general manager had arrived. Caroline turned toward Daniel. She apologized. Not as a customer. As the owner. Emily stared at her. Daniel was shocked. Caroline explained that the restaurant had failed them from the moment they entered and that no guest should ever be judged by clothing, occupation, or presumed wealth. Daniel said he did not want anyone fired because of him. That surprised Caroline. Even after being humiliated, he was thinking about someone else's livelihood. She told him accountability was her responsibility, not his. Vincent was removed from service that evening pending a formal review. Caroline later discovered several similar complaints that had been dismissed as misunderstandings. He was eventually terminated, not because one father complained, but because his pattern of behavior violated the company's standards. Then Caroline did something Daniel did not expect. She personally moved Daniel and Emily to the best window table in the restaurant. Emily's face lit up when she saw the city below. Caroline asked the kitchen to prepare the birthday cake. Daniel tried to pay for dinner. Caroline refused. He insisted. She told him the meal was not a gift. It was an apology from a company that had failed to provide the service he had already earned the moment his reservation was accepted. Daniel finally agreed. But the story did not end there. During dinner, Caroline learned that Daniel was an electrician. Mercer Hospitality had recently been struggling with repeated maintenance problems across several properties. Daniel mentioned, almost casually, that the lighting system near the restaurant's private dining area had been improperly balanced and was likely wasting electricity. Caroline laughed. Then she realized he was serious. The following week, her facilities director contacted Daniel's company. Daniel was assigned to inspect several Mercer properties. His recommendations saved the group thousands of dollars over the next year. Eventually, Mercer Hospitality offered him a permanent facilities supervisor position with better pay, health benefits, and predictable hours. Daniel did not receive the job because Caroline felt sorry for him. He earned it because someone finally had the chance to see what he could do. Months later, Daniel and Emily returned to Belmont. This time, Daniel wore the same thrift store blazer. He could afford a better one now. He kept the old one anyway. Emily asked why. Daniel told her it reminded him that clothes could tell people very little about the person wearing them. They sat beside the window. No one questioned whether they belonged there. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who has ever felt judged before being understood, and subscribe to Dad's Hope. Sometimes respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can leave a wound someone remembers for years. Before we end, please comment "Dignity has no price tag" if you believe no one should ever be treated as less important because of how much money they have. Years later, Emily barely remembered the pasta she ate that night or the view from the restaurant window. What she remembered was her father standing up when someone made her feel small. She remembered him protecting her dignity even when his own had already been hurt. And Daniel remembered something too. He had spent years worrying that he could not give his daughter everything other children had. That night, he realized the most valuable thing he could give her had never been an expensive meal, a perfect home, or a life without struggle. It was the certainty that no matter where they stood, no matter what they wore, and no matter how anyone looked at them, she would never have to question her worth.